Good morning once again. Hope you are all ready for the critical reasoning session. And I assume you had your worksheet in the PDF also downloaded, right? So critical reasoning is one of the interesting sections in the exam, and some students might consider it as a difficult one. But let me tell you something today. This is one of those sections which you can handle without much dependence on the knowledge aspects. The beauty of critical reasoning is it depends on your thinking process and it depends on the questions that you see in the exam hall. It doesn't depend a lot on how much knowledge you have accumulated over a period of time. It is a skill-based area. So scoring in this section is pretty much doable, pretty much possible, and each one of you should definitely aim to have a high score in this area. Good afternoon, good morning, Samyukta. It's nice to respond, to see a response because that is evident that I'm audible and visible. So that's one thing that I want to say about critical reasoning section, guys, because as future lawyers and future advocates, your responsibility is to interpret the given content and some of the great lawyers and advocates, when we see about them or when we read about them, they're always known to pull out an innovative and an interesting way of interpreting a given law or a given concept. So that's a skill that each one of you need for sure, right? So ultimately, this is a requirement for you in future. So let's focus on developing it from now on. So you'll have double benefits in the exam. Also, you will do well, and obviously, your career also is going to be good. Good morning, Kavya. Good morning, Chandan. Right? So that's one thing about critical reasoning, guys. It's a pretty doable section, and you should, with practice and with the right approach, this becomes one of your best friends also. This section is very interesting when you conquer it. And in real life also, many a times, this is what you need because sometimes with friends you have issues or you have minor fights and all. You would understand that it is all about how you interpreted a particular content or how certain lines of sentences are uttered or what is the perspective of a particular person about it. All that is reasoning. In every walk of our life, reasoning is essential for us, and hence it's a very important skill. So during this mock analysis sessions that we have, I hope you will gradually pick up the tips and tactics that we learn as part of the curriculum, as learn once again. I'm sure you have accumulated the knowledge over the past many months of preparation, but let's fine tune it or hone our skills in this area and conquer good scores. So typically, logical reasoning is the name of the section that we have, and you can expect at least 28 to 32 questions in this area, and a minimum of 20 marks you should have it. Minimum of 20 marks you should have it, and if you are aiming for the top NLUs and all, definitely you can reach out to 23, 24 for 28. You can come out to that range, guys. So aim for it. It is possible. Okay. So let's begin the session then. We'll go into the mocks. And after each paragraph, I'll give you some opportunity. If you have any particular question types or anything to discuss, we can do that. And towards the end of the session, I would be happy if you guys can put up any particular question types that you have difficulty with in critical reasoning, so that in the next week's session, we could definitely focus a little bit more in terms of discussing those question types. Okay, these areas, this section or this session is going to be great with your interaction and with your questions, because ultimately that's why we are all today. Okay, guys, so let's begin the day. So the few things that I want you to keep in mind when we are doing critical reasoning, guys, always read the argument carefully. The argument is nothing but the paragraph that you have there, right? And in the paragraph that you have, you'll have some information, and that information could be the argument. Identify what is the premise in the argument, identify what is the conclusion in the argument, right? So that will ultimately help you in your thinking process. So first and foremost thing that you need to do is understand the argument. Okay, once you understand the argument, it becomes very easy for you to look into the other aspects. Okay, now in terms of the arguments and other aspects, it's about the premises, conclusions. These are the aspects that you need to see. Well, you know that premise is basically a piece of data or a piece of information that we consider to be true, right? And conclusion is obviously the the end of the argument. In between, you have the assumptions and inferences. So if you're able to understand the given content, if you're able to locate the right arguments, the right questioning, right tone of the author, and how the content is presented, it becomes a cakewalk for you. Okay, next thing, when you're doing reasoning questions, especially reasoning is like the flow of content is very essential for you when you're doing your reasoning passages, right? As you read the content, always be an active reader, be actively involved in with the content. By doing that, what happens is, if there is any missing deduction or missing piece of data, you'll be able to sense it, right? For instance, when they move from specific information to a generalized deduction, automatically you'll have your thinking alert button telling you that yes, there is a missing link here. I think there is something wrong. Or if somebody is taking a piece of data and coming to a conclusion from that piece of data, then you can think around, okay, is it in the line of reasoning? Is it in the logical line of reasoning? We can always think of that when it comes to a thinking process. That is something that we need to keep in mind. So LOR is the word that we always say, that line of reasoning. So from your premises to the conclusions, you need to flow in your line of reasoning. In between, you have your assumptions, right? And you'll have your inferences, which are deductions. So in between, we come across these aspects. Sorry. Okay, so in between we come from inference and assumptions come in between. From premise to conclusion, are we in the right track? That is what we need to ask ourselves. And you always know that if your assumption is right, automatically your conclusion is right. And our thinking process always revolves around this part of the data, because that strengthens our arguments or weakens our arguments, right? That's something that you have to keep in mind. Another thing is differentiate between facts and opinion. What is a fact? A precise data, something that is considered to be a true. Opinion is more like somebody feels about it, right? Good, bad, all these things fall under opinions, because your judgments based on facts versus based on opinions, they are different. So hence you have to be very careful in these aspects. Once you're able to get comfortable with these things, everything becomes easy. Okay. The next one, when it comes to critical reasoning, or even we get this question in reading comprehension also, should we go to the passage first? Should we go to the question first? Now that you have a comfortable paper-based exam, a quick skim scan of the questions probably will give you an idea of what type of questions are coming up. If there is something to do with any particular, what do you say, if there's anything like there's an argument that they're talking about, you might be able to pinpoint the argument in the passage properly. Or if they're asking you about a strengthening, weakening, it helps you to locate that. Assumptions, conclusions, inferences, what type of questions are coming up. A quick glance might help you out, so that you'll have a basic framework. And another thing, the most important thing when it comes to critical reasoning questions is, sometimes the passage might be difficult to understand, and sometimes the question might be difficult to understand. Your first and primary requirement before you proceed to the options, right? Understand the question properly. Okay. Initially, when you start a particular passage, like for instance, you go to a passage, you are about to start the passage, take a quick skim scan of the question types. That will help you to start the thing, start the process. Then go through the process and always read the question thoroughly. Okay, thoroughly basically because the way the language is framed in questions sometimes makes it look difficult to interpret. In that case, you first have to look at the question in a piecemeal way. Gradually, you need to look at the question. Gradually, you need to decipher the question. And once you understand the question properly, then everything is going to be easy. So understand the questions that are asked, and most of the question types you'll already through your mock exams, through your knowledge pack, skill pack, and all the practice that you have done, majority of the question types are taken care of. But it's just the language and how the language is played related to a passage. The types of questions probably are familiar to you already, but the way the language is structured in the question is what you need to work on. And for that reason, obviously, you need to read and rephrase again. That's what you need to work on. Another thing, reasoning is always about interpretation. And what happens with such questions is the moment you go to options, there's a possibility of high chance of confusion. In order to avoid that, I always recommend students to think of an answer before proceeding to the options, because that gives you a direction, right? Like for instance, suppose there is a birthday dress that you need to pick, right? You ask everybody in the house, everybody will tell you a different opinion. But if you have a strong opinion towards something, then you'll just measure like, okay, this is my opinion. Let me see how many positives have come. And you're smart to say, okay, many liked it, so I'm taking it. So you'll have your conclusion according to what you believe is right. What is the thing that you actually need? So always think of an answer and proceed to the options. And then the most important one, and this is something that is very crucial also, have patience to read all the options carefully. Do not jump onto the first option. That is very important. Do not jump onto the first option. It may be the answer, but still have patience to read all options carefully, because sometimes there's a trap that is waiting for you, where the trap is something like an incomplete answer or a misdirection that will put you in a totally different way. Okay? So be careful when you're attacking the question, attack them in the right manner. Okay, so I have the passage here. This is the first passage that we have in the text, in the mock. So I'll give you 30 seconds. Just do a quick read of the passage, guys. Since you've already done the mock, I'm sure you're comfortable with it, but just to bring it back in memory, in your mind. Okay, now let me read the passage for you. In 1960, Singapore was a fishing village with an average GDP per capita of $427. Today, it has average GDP of 38,000, one of the highest in the world. One of the highest. It's not the highest, one of the highest. The language plays a role here. There are only 13 developing countries that have managed to grow for 25 years or more at an average of 7% or more. As per the rule of 72, at 7% growth, income and output double every decade. Singapore delivered these growth levels between 1967 and 2002 and ended up becoming a developed country. The transformation of a fishing village to one of the most respected developed countries can't just be an outcome of solid economies. The policies are an important part of the story, but they don't provide the complete picture. The rest of the picture has more to do with leadership, governance, etc. Now, if we look at this paragraph, this part, the first thing we started off is data related to Singapore GDP. And one thing we can understand from it is it increased a lot, right? And you have numbers, you have 1960 when it was a fishing village and the small GDP, and 67 to 2002, it had a great growth level and became a developed country. But later, that part of the data was more like an introduction. But the focus of the author of this paragraph is moving towards it is not just the economic policies, but there is something else. It can't be just an outcome of economic policies, but there are many other things that need to fall in place for this great achievement to be accomplished. So that's how the direction of the passage is going. So basically, from this here, you can understand the author is going to go in the direction of that other factors which actually help Singapore to achieve this accomplishment. These ending lines will actually go and take you there. Had it been the first paragraph only, and if it was the next question, what is going to come up next? If you come across that type of questions, going in line with these last lines, you will actually be able to sense that. Okay? So what is it that we are going to face in the second paragraph? So Lee Kuan Yew's story is all about creating opportunities out of crisis. So this is a great man who used bad situations and make some benefit out of it. That's what we have. Generally, crises are opportunities for change because they weaken vested interest and resistance. So people try to look for opportunities when there's bad situation. Opportunity is not, however, always seized. So it is basically opportunities might come out of crisis, but it is seizing that opportunity that matters a lot. Have you made the best use in terms of capturing that opportunity, right? Like for instance, this year, normal year, your CLAT is supposed to be somewhere in second Sunday of May, right? This year you're having it on July 23. So how many of you are going to capture this great opportunity of extended preparation time and get a seat in an NLU? So that is what is about capturing an opportunity. Okay? So Lee took charge of Singapore when he was just 42, captured a series of crises, managed them to convert into great opportunities. 65, they had foreign press where they predicted some kind of a gloomy situation, and then the British kind of withdrew their military bases. Unemployment and GDP were not so great. So even though he had fears, he tried to keep the spirits high. By 71, they had their own military base, and later they had competition from Indonesia and Malaysia with regards to ports. So they worked on their ports and exports kind of business. Singapore, which is why he started preparing his city-state to adapt to an orientation of doing things better and cheaper than its neighbors. So basically, there was competition from his neighbors, and the solution and the method that he found in order to overcome the situation or benefit out of the crisis was to take a methodology which was better than others and cheaper than others. Okay, so cheaper is economical aspect, better is more better organization of the ports, it could be, or better policies, less of corruption, there's less of bureaucracy probably, or anything like that. Multiple policy interventions. Okay, so this is how the passage is predominantly about. You talked about some data, led it to Lee Kuan's story. Let's get into questions. Which of the following is an apt title to a passage? The one thing with passage-based questions is you can expect a few questions which are from, they may look like English reading comprehension kind of questions, you might see them in reasoning, or they might look like reasoning question you might see in English comprehension. There isn't any time where I was not telling to students that strengthening weakening kind of questions or assumptions or conclusions kind of questions also you may come across in RC. So just be cautious and approach the strategy. That's it. So let's look at the apt title of the passage. Whenever we had apt title of the passage, we always talk about the scope. I hope you remember that. And the focus part. Right? We always talk about the scope part of it. And relevance. That is another thing that we have. So if you look at the passage and the options that we have, Singapore's transformation, Lee Kuan's the transformer, rule of 72, 35 years of development. Now, rule of 72, this part is not my answer. However, had it been a question where which of the following is available in the passage, which of the following is available in the passage, and they say something like a definition of a concept is given. Rule of 72, they kind of explain what rule of 72 is. So that kind of questions, if it comes, this will become an answer, but this is not a title, definitely not a title. Then 35 years of development. This is not the answer. The reason is recently, pretty recently actually, I've come across something which says about 7 years of Modi government and what are the developments and all that. That's something your GK faculty might come across, or your GK mocks, or probably Abhyaas YouTube channel. There are some current affairs playlists that are there. So any of those areas might cover that thing. So what I saw in that a particular 7-year development thing was what happened in the defense sector, what happened in the infrastructure area, what happened with the government policies, etc. So there was a list of things that happened. Okay, so if I have to have the content, or if I have to have the title of 35 years of development, I should have like total focus to be on the lists of development over the years, okay, in different areas. Okay, but now if you see, the focus is not predominantly on that. Yes, there's development. Yes, they talked about ports and military bases, but that didn't stand out like a main area for us in the passage. So I'll put it as. Now I'm left with two options: Singapore's transformation and Lee Kuan, the original transformer. Now, if I have to say Singapore's transformation, if I had the content in the first paragraph and then the content was just focused on how Singapore developed its ports and how Singapore developed its military bases, then I would have gone to A as an answer. But the passage focused on the point specifically that the development was not just economic policies, but some kind of intervention and other factors playing, and the emphasis was on lukewarm. So the first paragraph was kind of leading to the second paragraph, which was the focus. So I would prefer this to be the main title for this particular question. So this was a question where you have the A and B to choose an answer choice with, and my answer will be B. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Next one. Which of the following inferences are true on the basis of passage? Now, whenever we have this inference kind of word, we always need to be careful that we need to read between lines. We always need to read between lines with inferences, right? If there's any missing link, we have to see. One point that I want you to keep in mind, whenever we talk about reasoning and whenever we say about inferred questions in reasoning, we always say, be careful and read between the lines. That's something that we say. But however, sometimes you might have options which are also direct from the passage. So that is something that is, what do you say, it depends on how the question is framed by the developer of the question paper. So you need to be careful with choosing the answer here. Now let's look at this question. Singapore witnessed a 12% growth between 67 and 2002. Factually, you had at least 7% every year type of thing, at least 7% kind of thing. So that we cannot say. Singapore is a developed country as on today, yes. Singapore is a developing country, no. So pretty easy question here, and each one of you might have done it right. That's only 2. Okay, C is the answer. Okay, and one caution that I want you to tell you here with this question type. Usually the mistake that students do, here you have Romans 1, 2 and 3, right? Instead of Romans 1, 2 and 3, if you get A, B, C as Romans, A, B, C letters as options, and then again further options with A, B and C, just be careful there, guys. Students make a mistake. Like for instance, in option B, I might say only C is right. In option C, I might say only B is right. Be careful in your marking. Especially with OMR question types, you might make a big mistake here. I hope you are understanding what I'm trying to say. This is not a CR strategy, guys. This is an exam strategy that I'm trying to talk here. And this question makes me think about that possible mistake with regards to some students. Next one. Which of the following assertions are consistent with the passage? So this is nothing but which of the following statements are in agreement with the passage, or they go along with the passage. The first statement says not more than 13 countries have achieved an average growth of 7% consistently for more than 25 years. Second one says rule of state 72 states that when growth takes place at the rate of 7%, then income and output doubles every decade. Yeah. So whenever you have such things, You have to be very careful. The first option, if you see, it is something which is degrees of comparison in English language, you can completely agree with. A little restructuring of the sentence, that's what we had to happen here. There are only 13 countries that have managed to grow for 25 years. That was the line that we had from the passage. Next one was rule of 72, and the explanation is pretty much clear. And one thing, you need to be cautious. Sometimes what they do is they mess up in this part of the data. They try to trap you by giving partially correct information. So you need to have patience to read everything correctly and every option correctly here. So in this case, both are right. 1 and 2 are the answers here. Okay? Both 1 and 2 are the answers. That is what we have. Easy question again. It's not at all difficult. Okay. Next one. Which of the following qualifies as the impacts of Malay ultra threat and British government decision to shut down the bases? So basically here the question is, there is some action that took place. What was the outcome of it? And what do you say? What was the outcome, or what was the result, or what was the effect of it? Right? Something to think, like if the data is not given, it could be a course of action kind of thing. What is possible, what might happen will become a course of action kind of thing. But here it was like what kind of results happened or what kind of effects happened of it. We have clear-cut information that GDP was hit and also unemployment rate was high. So definitely factually you have both the things. GDP by 20% and unemployment at 15%. So both the statements seem to be right there, both 1 and 2 again. Easy question, not at all difficult. Okay. Next one, which of the following assumptions are consistent with regards to the passage? So basically thinking process or what is lying behind, etc. First one, the transformation of a fishing village into a developed country is a result of solid economic policies. If you look at the first paragraph, it is kind of mentioned that the author, I mean, assumptions more in terms of the author's perspective. It's not just economic policies, but there are many other things that have to come in place. So that kind of version we had there. Next one. Crises are opportunities which weaken vested engrossment and resistance. Yeah, that is what is said. When you have a crisis, there is less of resistance, and you might want to implement something, and you might be able to successfully do that, and people might work towards it. So that is what it is. Of course, we have another point of view also, seizing the opportunity, but considering the two options, and we have to we have the situation here. So D looks like a best case scenario. As I told in the last session also, always think of options that are given. That is also important. You have to think of the question, think of the answers, and then think of the options given, look at the options, and possibly make your decision. So the 1/10th question, the answer choice is D. Overall, this is a pretty much doable passage, not at all difficult. So I guess at least 50 to 60% minimum students have attempted it, and with great accuracy. And the one thing that I might think, if somebody did not attempt this question, is you're not giving due amount of time for your logical reasoning. You're probably giving it to some other area or some other section, or maybe you're just avoiding this section, which is not good, because this is a pretty much doable passage. Easy to medium questions, not at all difficult. Majority of them are pretty much direct, and you're able to find the facts. And the passage, predominantly the passage is not difficult to read. With the amount of learning you had related to reading in English or legal, etc., this is a pretty much doable passage, not at all lengthy, not too lengthy. So hopefully by next exam, you'll have at least a great increment of at least 5 marks in terms of your critical reasoning. Okay? Are there any questions? You can shoot it there, here. Any questions, Samyukta, Kavya, Sri Chandan? Hope you guys attempted this question. And I would say, if I have to see how many marks you could score, Pretty much sure you can score all five if you are targeting a top three NLUs. Um, if you made a mistake or if you find it a little bit difficult with title questions or anything like that, maybe one error is acceptable, but at least 4 to 5 marks is what you have to score with this passage. Okay, at least 4 to 5 marks you should be able to score. No doubts. Okay, so let me proceed on to the next passage then. Quickly read it, take a look at it. Passage 2. We always tell something about reading comprehension or any passages. Always look at the first lines carefully because they give you some kind of hint about how the passage is developing or what is the source of the passage, or what is the structure of the passage, or what is going to be the main idea of the passage. You'll get some hints there from the first and last lines of the passage. So here, if you look at it, basing on the existing information, so you're looking at some data here. The interpretations are made based on some data. Basing on existing information, it is indicated that many countries have dropped death penalty as method of punishment for lawbreakers. So the information is giving you that the existing information is telling you that capital punishment is dropped. Then capital punishment is severest type of punishment, as nothing can be more painful and crueler than depriving a person of his own life, which is a very precious gift, and bringing the person to death. The methods, however, are different. The transition words we always say focus on it. Cruel and painful is what he's saying there, and then the methods are different at different places, so diverse methods. Some methods of putting men to death are painless, whereas some are less painful or some could be very painful. So level of pain is different. One of the main arguments, now comes the argument, that arises against, now for or against is something that we need to always be careful with. Against capital punishment is that killing is something very bad, as it is against human rights, whether it is done by a criminal or society itself. This is a standard statement that we always have against capital punishments. Everyone's life is equally precious, and taking another life for a life that is already gone is not justified at all. Indirectly, it is also like that. If somebody kills someone and in the name of law, you're killing that person, you're also kind of committing similar kind of crime, but in the name of law, right? So that's what it is all about. The theory of justice, which demands a tooth for tooth or an eye for an eye, is the strongest argument for capital punishment. When a criminal doesn't act to fulfill his selfish motives, resulting in personal gains, then the equilibrium of justice in the society is disturbed. Now you're having another statement about tooth for tooth, eye for an eye. So if you kill someone, kill them. That type of statement is here. Let's look into the questions. Which of the following is a valid assumption for the arguments in the passage? This is something you need to be cautious with, guys. Sometimes now this one is a small passage for you, around 250 words or so you will have. Sometimes like the previous one or the later ones that are coming across, they may be like 350 or 450 words kind of passages. So based on the size of the passage, your attention has to be more, because sometimes pinpointing the argument is important. Identifying what is it that we are talking, on which aspect are we questioning in the passage. So attack the question or locate the question or locate the argument in the passage. And if you're not able to get a clear idea about that, sometimes what happens is look at the options. Options might also give you an idea about what is being discussed. So let's look at this. The individual who is executed may not be himself responsible for his deed. The real culprits are the society and social circumstances that made a criminal out of him. They're made by even genetic factors at work. So basically, the statement is saying that people and genetic factors are the reason for the crime, not just the individual. Next one is, with use of laboratory investigative techniques, punishment is awarded on reports. Faulty. So basically, the statement is more about the person who's actually getting a death penalty. He might not be someone who deserves it. Now, this kind of thinking process makes sense when the passage is developed on those lines where what happens if tomorrow you find out that this guy is not the right guy, or what happens if your data is incomplete and the judge took a decision. So such scenarios you might think of this option, but at this point of time it's out of scope. Next one, there are often no clear-cut guidelines regarding whom to award a sentence. This is about who should get a death sentence. In which case should a judge give a death sentence? Now, if you look at the entire passage for us, the focus was about capital punishment was being dropped, capital punishment being dropped, capital punishment a severe cruel punishment, the types or the way capital punishment is executed in different places differ, and the two things for and against capital punishment. All the above three, A, B, C here are more about who gets it. Okay, it is not about capital punishment, should we have it or not, but it is more in that aspect of who gets it, why did that person commit crime, is there a possibility that person is not genuinely at fault. So all those lines are actually a little bit away from the structure or the flow of the passage. The answer choice here is D. Death penalty of capital punishment is not uniformly awarded in all countries. This is the best possible thing that we can take it from the thing. Because one more thing, the whole reason that we are having an argument here is the way the punishment is different in different places. Obviously, guys, when do you think about something being wrong and right? When it is different at different places. That itself gives you a thing. You have a comparative scenario where one place it is severe, another place it is not severe. Like for instance, let's say a country X is having capital punishment and they're trying to kill someone or hang someone. United States might have some leverage in that country. Probably their Secretary of States or their internal country politics might put a pressure on them to stop such kind of capital punishments. And since there is a different version there, whatever version they have there, since they have a different version there in one country, there's a different version in another country, it's an argument that comes out of it. So obviously that's the cause for the argument. Differences are the reasons for the argument. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Which of the following, if true, provides the most support for the argument for capital punishment? Okay, which of the following supports capital punishment in favor of, agrees? So basically this should be something which is positive and which strengthens the given argument. That is something you have to keep in mind. This is something that strengthens argument. Okay, society wants it, law reflects public opinion. Come on, guys. Law or judgments are not supposed to be based on people's opinions. That's the reason whenever any law or anything is in court, most of the people in politics and politicians, if you ask them, they say, well, the issue is in court, so we'll not talk about it at this point of time. So you can always say that kind of statements. So that's something that I cannot agree at this point of time. The cost of maintaining a person in a high security prison with facilities compatible with human rights requirements for the whole life can be very high. So here you are talking about capital punishment, and you have to go for capital punishment, which is good because it's costly to maintain that. This kind of discussion actually happened related to the November 2008 attacks. I think November attacks in Mumbai. The people involved, the person involved in that case, the version was something like that. Maintaining a high security prison was actually a lot more costly than giving a punishment. So that version actually was popular at that time also. But let's see, I had this word here, most support. This is something which was evidently very clearly mentioned, support versus most support. So I'll have to go through other options and see if this is right or wrong. A better economy with more jobs would lessen crime rates more than death penalty. So you're going in a different direction here. A convicted killer left alive when he had already taken his life. Victim's life is unfair, and life imprisonment is inadequate to act as a deterrent for others. So basically, in this statement here, it is saying that if a person committed a crime and if he is allowed to live for a life imprisonment rather than being killed, there's a possibility that others might also think that the severity of the punishment is not very high, so it doesn't stop them. So punishments are sometimes about reformation, and punishments are sometimes about stopping others from doing it, right? So looking at options B and D, the most word pushes me to go towards this. Got it, guys? So here it is most. Which of the following is best? Most. The words are important. As I told you earlier, focus on the question, focus on the nuances, focus on adjectives or specific keywords that will help you to make the right decision. So some of you might have made a mistake between B and C with this question, and the cause could be that. Okay? Next one. Which of the following, if true, undermines the argument of a tooth for tooth, eye for an eye? Undermines is basically an important word again. It's not in favor of this tooth for tooth or an eye for eye kind of thing, or proves it otherwise. There's one more important aspect that I want you to remember when it comes to reasoning questions. This line, which probably many of you just ignore or might go along with, which are the following, if true. What does this mean basically? Basically, it's trying to say that the options that I'm having here, the A, B, C, etc., might not be something that are exactly given in the passage, but if you're thinking that these are true, then how do they support the argument? So treat them to be the true parameters or treat them to be the true sentences and then apply them in the question. Okay, I want this point to be remembered because there were many times questions where students were thinking like, okay, this particular thing is not given in the passage, so let me omit it as an option. But no, the whole purpose of that line, which of the following, if true, is that to say consider the given statements to be true, apply it to the given argument, does it support it or does it weaken it, and then come and let's look at the answer. Okay, so let's see. A chance at rehabilitation should be given to the offender so that he can spend his own precious life in best and harmless manner without any further crimes. So basically, if he's at a rehabilitation or if he's in some other place under observation, definitely one thing, we didn't kill him. Okay. Second thing, maybe he gets an opportunity to learn from his mistakes and lead a better life. And since he is already under rehabilitation and in a place like that, there's no less chance of committing any crime also. He's under observations. So that makes sense that you don't need to kill a person. Does it justify putting him under rehabilitation and observing him, giving an opportunity to live, which also reduces crime, is a better solution than killing him? Looks like it. Let's see. The anticipatory suffering of the criminal who may be kept on death row for many years makes the punishment more severe than just depriving the life of the criminal. Now, this is more like the wait tactics. You keep someone in waiting, they're actually more afraid of what punishment that they're going to get or what might eventually happen. That actually causes fear rather than the actual punishment. Because punishment, people usually say, in movies, we always come across, I don't want his punishment to be so quick. I want to see him suffer, that kind of movie dialogue that we see. So this is something close to that, the suffering of a criminal, waiting for punishment. And I do remember some crime suits and crime episodes, on Netflix, where I do remember coming across such kind of situation where the person who was actually charged with a very heinous crime had to take a physical attack on himself because the fear was severe, what is going to happen was severe. So something like that. So yeah, of course, I don't support that kind of activity either, but I'm just telling you the fear is something, fear of waiting or fear of punishment or what else is another thing which troubles the person rather than the punishment itself. Next, capital punishment is vengeance rather than retribution, and such activity is morally a dubious concept. Now, this is very directly in line with the tooth for tooth concept and why it's wrong. It is like people who are against it will say that you killing a person because that person killed someone is not justified. right? So this one is actually directly in line with the passage. But compared to 112 question and this one, if you see, one, I have all the above options. Two, I have the arguments, which of the following undermines. I don't have anything predominantly about the most or least or anything like that. And all the options seem to be pretty much doable and acceptable one. So here I would go with D, all the above, as an answer choice for the 113th question. So you had a strengthening question there previously, and you have a weakening question. Always look at it, supports. So basically, putting a person in rehabilitation and punishing is a better decision versus giving death sentence. A person living in fear of what kind of punishment actually causes more pain or more trauma to him than the punishment itself. Third, you becoming a criminal because of another person who actually committed a crime, because you're not exactly a criminal, but in the name of law, we are punishing someone the same kind of punishment. So that kind of thing, the three aspects kind of justify the tooth for tooth or an eye for eye is not right. So undermines is the key word there. So two things: interpret the word undermined correctly and look at the options, adapt the given thing correctly, and your answer choice is pretty much key. Next one, the above argument is most parallel in its structure to which of the following. So parallel structure questions, they are pretty easy, guys. All you have to do is read the given data, and most of the times whenever I have seen parallel structure question, they are a little lengthy because you need to really establish a parallel structure properly. And whenever you treat parallel structure questions, interpret the statements carefully, simplify the statements carefully, and then you will get to the right answer. Have patience to read them properly, catch hold of the nuances. It's more to do with attentive. Parallel structure questions are more related to attentively reading the options rather than an in-depth reasoning this, because you'll find the structure mostly there. Let's see the thing here. The execution of a person for killing another person is an act of revenge and not justice. Society and authorities acting on behalf shouldn't resort to the same measures used by criminals. So basically, X killed Y, so justice kills X. That kind of statement. The idea of imposing a punishment of the same type is absurd. A rape is not punished by rape, nor is a thief punished by being subjected to theft. And generally, it is not acceptable for justice system to apply vindictive punitive measures that could lead to an increase of violence within society and worsen the original problem. Obviously, X did something to Y, justice does the same thing to Y, in whether it is capital punishment, whether it is theft, or whether it is any other kind of thing. How logical it is. Where is justice then? Where is law there? Where is punishment and proportionate punishments or any other aspects, and logically correct punishments or humanitarian grounds? All those things need to be considered. So this looks like a parallel structure. Let's see the next one. The more cool-headed we can be in judging guilt and handing out punishment, the better one. One of the tasks of criminal justice is to protect society from extreme emotions and instead make more impartial ones. Thus, the more we can leave out feelings of revenge from decisions about punishment, the better. This is more about being emotion-free, but it's not giving me any proper structure here. So this question, I would probably go with option A here. Option A seems to be a better answer choice for me here. Okay. I hope that's clear. Yeah. Chandan, I hope it's clear. Good. This is also a pretty doable passage, small one. Capital punishment is a familiar topic to you, and I think this kind of argument is also very clear, and most of you, when you were interacting in any kind of debates and all, you might have come across this. Let's look at the next one, guys. I'm assuming there are no doubts. Next. Nearly a fortnight after it won approval for Covaxin under restricted emergency use conditions, Bharat Biotech has formally informed via its website that vaccine is inadvisable in those with a history of allergies, fever, and bleeding disorders. Those on medication or blood thinners and whose immunity has been compromised have also been told not to take the medicine, or to take the vaccine. This is along with the recommendation that vaccine is not to be given to pregnant, expecting mothers or lactating, someone who just gave birth to the child and baby and all. So basically, this thing kind of says that the author here says that Bharat Biotech nearly a fortnight. So after I got the permission for usage, after a fortnight, they mentioned it on their website about who should not take this particular vaccine. Its website. So basically, they didn't go into media, they didn't go into press or anything. Only website is what they used. This along with other recommendations. Okay. A similar set of recommendation has been given to prospective recipients of Covishield. A similar set. So something like this was given to another kind of vaccine, Covishield, and which was manufactured by Serum in greater numbers. Now available in greater numbers. So you have huge numbers of product available. Ordinarily, a fact sheet as well as a product insert. What do you mean by that? A note that accompanies every vial of vaccine is mandatory formality. It is compulsory. Mandatory is an intense word. However, the context in which the two vaccines are being administered in India imbues them with magnified significance. The way the vaccines are being rolled out, the way the vaccine is being spreading in the country, so it's being given a lot of significance. Covaxin has been rolled out with insufficient evidence of efficacy or whether it is actually protective. The vaccines have been so far made available to healthcare and sanitation workers and other frontline people who don't have a choice in being administered, but can decide not to be inoculated. So basically, they cannot say that I want this vaccine or I want that vaccine. They have a vaccine choice and they have to take it. Only decision that they can do it is I don't want a vaccine. That's what it is all about. And you have some data about 9 states and situation. India has nearly 786,000 of those eligible who got vaccinated so far, and it is far short of the target. So this is something to do with how many got vaccinated and how many are eligible for it. So it's some kind of proportionate number, some calculation is required here. It is certainly early days and presumably there will be acceleration in days ahead. So the author is hopeful there is going to be better chances, because this kind of shows the language here kind of based on the language, this kind of sentence is there. Sometimes you'll get questioned, is the author hopeful of it? Is the author not hopeful of a future scenario? So in order to handle that kind of question, these lines help us. The closing lines sometimes help, and the adjectives, adverbs used by the author in the passage help us there. Next one. So however, the government is yet to explain. So yet to explain, based on the feedback from students, why the vaccine, the single most awaited product of 2021, has not seen more enthusiastic use. So basically, people are not running for vaccines. Why? That's the question. This, in spite of health ministry officials underlying the adverse events following the vaccination have been negligible low. So basically, the side effects part of it that happen after vaccination, they are not being telecasted or promoted a lot. So basically, there's no fear on that angle. So why aren't people taking it? Why isn't there huge crowd? That's a question. Okay. So basically, we started off with Covaxin, and where after launching it or after allowing to use it, they kind of said who shouldn't use it. Then we mentioned about Covishield and a parallel scenario with Covishield. However, we also mentioned about the scenario of healthcare workers who don't have a choice on what to be inoculated with. And then you have the pending numbers or how many people yet to be inoculated, and the question of why aren't people running for vaccination. Okay? So these are the 5 things that we discussed in this passage. Let's move on to the questions. Which of the following statements regarding Covaxin holds true on the basis of passage? Holds true is basically a question which is asking you to confirm the information in the passage. Such questions, whenever you get, it's more like spending time on each and every option, locating the line in the passage which discusses that particular thing. That solves the problem. So the vaccine has no side effects and is available for everyone. So we don't have no side effect kind of concept here, because the last line also kind of say adverse events, etc. are not discussed a lot. So that's one thing. And we have situation where some people are advised not to take it. The vaccine is not recommended to pregnant women, pretty clearly pregnant and lactating. We have that statement. Covaxin has no evidence of 100% efficacy but acts in similar way to Covishield. Now, if you have the passage, we have this line, a similar set of restrictions has been given to Covishield recipients, similar set of restrictions or information about who cannot take it. We have a comparative analysis or comparative statement related to that point, who shouldn't take it for Covaxin and similarly to Covishield. But efficiency part of it, or how effective is Covishield and how effective is Covaxin, is it creating the similar kind of output, that part of the data is not given. So no evidence of efficacy, obviously they didn't mention anything on efficacy part of it. Similar part is fine, but output is this part. But the question was, the paragraph was more about who shouldn't take it. So hence, we need to be careful with this option choice, and I will go with D 115. D is the answer, only 2. Okay, so the option 3, statement 3, that Roman 3 is actually a trap failure. As I told you, whenever you have such information, you need to be cautious to make sure that the full data is correct, full piece of data is correct. This works a lot with summary type of questions also. Okay, students fall for a trap for an incomplete summary. Don't fall for it. Have patience to read the entire passage. Next one. Which of the following qualifies as a legitimate inference on the basis of the passage? Which of the following can you deduce or deduct from the passage? The vaccine has been made available only to 50% of the population. I don't have any all the above and none of the above kind of questions here. And based on the passage, we know that we didn't talk about who gets the passage, who gets the vaccine, or who has access to it. We know that healthcare workers were given so far. We can remember that around 7.86 kind of data we have. As of now, I'm not going back to the passage because I think that's not my answer. Covaxin has no side effects. Well, that's not something. Vaccine can cause side effects to children and pregnant women. We didn't discuss about children. Vaccine can cause side effects to pregnant women and people with bleeding disorder. So in this case, if I have to say, option B is happily gone. Children is a fact that I remember that we didn't discuss about children. So I'll consider that as not my answer. But if I look at the pregnant woman, I do remember that. Bleeding disorder, another type of disorder. I mean, whenever you have a list of things like this, I would prefer to go back and check in the passage if it's really a bleeding disorder, because what happens is we might not remember every particular thing in the list, right? Like A, B, C, you have a list of things, and this is a kind of thing which will take very less amount of time to go back and refer, and the chance of accuracy is going to be high. Got it? Being in a rush here is not required. It doesn't take too much time. Let me quickly check the 116 question. So I do have my allergies, fever, and bleeding disorders is given in the third line. So definitely D looks right for me. So let's see my options. Yeah, only D. Only D is the right answer for me. Okay? And availability only to, we only discuss about nearly, discuss about who got vaccinated. Okay, we have the statement, the vaccines have been so far made available to healthcare and sanitation workers and other frontline people. So I cannot say that is 50%. That's another reason I can put it aside for that option. Okay, so that's another reason to eliminate that option. Okay, so I hope that's clear, guys. No doubts on that. So this is also gone because it's only made available for healthcare professionals, etc. So A is gone, B is gone, C is gone, and D is my answer. Next one. Which of the following is false on the basis of the passage? Which of the following is false? Whenever we have this, we have to be careful. Which of the following is not true according to the passage? Sometimes people catch the true word and they ignore the not part of it and make a mistake. So be cautious. We are lucky to have which of the following is false, clear. Which of the following is not true? Some people make mistake. Don't do that. It's the same question, guys. All you need is alert. Okay. Healthcare and sanitation workers had a choice between Covaxin and Covishield. No, they didn't have a choice. They only had a choice about not getting vaccinated. Healthcare and sanitation workers can choose to avoid getting vaccinated. Yes, looks like it. Covishield has more efficacy rate than Covaxin. Now, this part of it, I don't think we have the information that Covaxin has been rolled out. Sorry, Covishield is available in greater numbers and developed by serum. That's what we have. Efficiency percentage of that is not given. So I would prefer that. Let me see about Covishield here. Yeah, with Covishield, I don't have much Covishield, I don't have much information here. So yeah, I'm looking at this statement here. This is perfectly false, right? They had a choice is false. They can choose to avoid getting vaccinated. This is true. And Covishield has more efficacy rate than Covaxin. This is not given. This is not given. So definitely, I think you might have come across questions like which of the following is definitely true, which of the following is definitely false. So going by that, the third one is not given. So I would prefer to go with B, only one. Okay? I hope you understood why I didn't go for three, guys. It's not given statement. Okay, not given. True, false, not given. So I cannot take a decision on not given part of the information, right? Now this is a little tricky part of it. Sometimes this is a question type that we see a lot in other competitive exams also. Not given is something which is a tougher choice to make. So you have to be cautious when you get this question, and based on your accuracy and other chances and your clarity and confidence, go for it. Next, 118. Which of the following statements is a valid assumption in the given passage? Availability of vaccines in required quantity is a major problem. Prospective recipients are skeptical about the efficacy and side effects of the vaccine. A major deterrent is non-availability of the choice of vaccine. The choice of the vaccine aspect, if you look at the three options here, recipients are skeptical about efficacy and side effects. That part of it is something. Why aren't we getting queues of people? What is happening? That kind of statement we have here. Okay. And availability of vaccine is a major problem. Well, we have it that it's currently available only to healthcare workers. That part of the data is given, but the author didn't mention anywhere, or his focus hasn't been that okay, only so much is made available. There's a shortage, etc. The focus was more about why aren't people running. The question of why aren't people queuing up comes when there are things available, and the focus is not on that. Okay. Non-availability of choice of vaccine is a point which is more specific to the healthcare workers, not for other people in general. So again, that's something that I cannot take it directly. So answer choice here again, 118, I would go with C. Okay. That's something I would clearly go with the development of the passage and the way it ended at the end. The question was predominantly about why isn't a queue waiting there. And obviously, this was the scenario. Initially, when the vaccines were rolled out, when they were rolled out for healthcare workers, the situation was like that, where there were wastage of vials of vaccination also. And I think there was an intervention based from the court also, that end of the day, if there is a dose that is available, give it to people rather than waiting for an age criteria or somebody registering, etc. So that kind of thing also came up in news at one part of time. So this is more related to that. One thing is current scenario. I mean, in the last 1 month, definitely there was a vaccine shortage in news too. So basically, when we read arguments, as I told in the last class also, let's think related to the content in the paragraph. Today, yes, vaccine shortage, vaccine being available to people above 18 or people above 12, or vaccine being freely available, vaccine drives, etc. Today's topics. But when the vaccines were initially rolled out, it was not about a shortage, and many of you know that India at that time was rolling out to other countries also, and the government tried to put up some wastage facts also, wastage statistics also. So let's look at the data that we have in the passage. Based on that, we'll go for it. And why aren't they queuing up when there isn't much adverse things and other things talked about? It's about people are skeptical. Let's move on to the next one. I hope that's clear. Very good. Kavya, Samyukta, Surya, Sri Chandan. Hope that's clear with you. Let's get to the next one. Fourth passage. When you encounter a new culture, confusion arises from the new situation and lack of information. As you start interacting with new culture, the second stage evolves. Each encounter is preceded by anxiety and information collected and rehearsal. After the event, you are either triumphant or defeated. First thing, when you encounter new situation, there's confusion from the situation and lack of information. You don't have information. Okay? Confusion and lack of information. Once you start interacting, each encounter, each thing is preceded. You have some kind of information, anxiety, okay, and then you collect the information and you try to process the information. And then when you're happy, you might be happy with the process or you might feel bad about it. A heightened roller coaster effect is characteristic of this stage. Basically, what he's trying to say, you might feel high at sometimes, you might feel low at sometimes. Emotional support is needed from people who can cheer you onward. Once some of the fundamentals are mastered, there's time for exploration and discovery. In this stage of wonder and infatuation, there is no interest in attending to less attractive sides of the culture. So there's a point of time where you are having a lot of wonder and infatuation, and you want to explore it. And at that point of time, you don't look at the negative sides of it. Okay. After a while, self-correction takes place. Irritation and anger begin to be experienced as deficit shortages seem to be apparent. For some people, they overwhelm the positive characteristics and become predominant. So after a period of time, what happens is you start seeing deficits and then you develop an anger. And for some people, the negative feelings become dominant over the positive feelings. Okay. Finally, there is a rebalance of reality, and then you come to a stage of rebalance where you absorb the positives and negatives. You understand and enjoy the new culture without ignoring the less desirable features. New information is acquired, remembered. Old schema and perceptions are revised and qualified. So basically, you assimilate data, you process the data, you change your opinions, you absorb data, and then you are into an active learning process. This process results in valuing and affirming the best in culture while at the same time seeing it in completeness. So here, if you look at it in between in the second stage or third stage, you ignore a bad part of it. But here, you look at complete process or complete scenario is looked at. This capacity to affirm the whole is critically important. So you accept the entire thing is important. An appreciative inquiry is proposed as a way of helping members of different cultures recognize and value their differences and create a new culture where different values are understood and honored. So you kind of create a scenario where all types of cultures are better understood and accepted and respected. Executives, those who must lead this culture change projects, need to understand. So something this is for the executives, that equal employment opportunity, affirmative action, and sexual harassment policies, as viewed and implemented in organizations, are problem-oriented change strategies. So basically, when it's a harassment case or equal employment or things like that, there's a problem and you're trying to give a solution towards that. These are more oriented towards that. They focus on correcting what is wrong rather than creating a valued future. When it comes to culture, right, you absorb the other culture, you accept the other culture, the differences come down, so you embrace other people, so working becomes smooth. And that is more a future aspect. It helps the future. So the other things are more about problem solving, and this is more about future impact and all. Executives themselves will need to inquire appreciatively into cultures that are not known to them before they are equipped to lead cultural change in their own organization. So basically, this is a paragraph which is talking about culture changes. You have multiple stages of culture changes and how an individual goes from one stage to another stage. Whenever you have such passages coming up, the flow of passage is something you have to have a mental framework of. And maybe since it's a paper-based thing, you can scribble like what I did, or you can underline. First stage is confusion, second stage anxiety, triumphant, defeated kind of scenarios. absorb information, etc. Then you have into infatuation, where you ignore the negatives. Then you come to self-realization, self-correction, where you might see the negatives a lot. Then you kind of come to the balance of reality, where you absorb everything. So the 5 stages at least you can see here predominantly. Okay. So yes, one thing is you might not remember which state is what, so always it's advantageous to come back and connect with the passage. Which of the following statements cannot be inferred based on the passage? A particular effect of interaction with a new culture is an opportunity to enjoy a roller coaster ride. Now, I'm sure you remember the word roller coaster from the passage, but it was more a roller coaster effect, right? The high and the low kind of effect, the emotional framework that you'll be going through. It is not that you get an opportunity to go to an amusement park and sit on a roller coaster. No, that is not it. Now, this is an interesting question and an option where the language tried to trap you. Okay, so don't fall for it. Let's see other options. Entering a new culture brings about a shift in process of thinking and feeling. Obviously, thinking, you are confused and you evolve your thinking process. Feeling, you go through a lot of emotions, anger, acceptance, happiness, joy, defeatedness, everything. So makes sense. An initial sense of wonder and awe makes a new entrant oblivious to the less a pleasant side of the new culture. We have the clear-cut line after the first paragraph where they clearly say that initially when you're trying to like something or know something, you might put aside the bad things about it and then accept the new ones and have a lot of awe about it. Right? Next one. So some people can forever remain angry and dissatisfied with the new culture. That is what is given in the second paragraph, where you talk about self-correction and then you see the dominant negative things a lot, and those things might put up a bigger impression on that. So if you look at this question, cannot be inferred is the thing. This is like a first stage, this is close to the second stage, and this is second or third stage. This is close to the fourth stage. So definitely this becomes my answer. 119 A is the answer. Clear-cut elimination technique helps out. And wherever you are in doubt, always connect with the passage, that becomes smooth. Next one. Which of the following is a desirable outcome when one enters a new culture? What happens when one enters a new culture? Learn the culture, accept the culture. It might help you in future or future growth. Let's look at it. Understanding the appreciative process, appreciating stages and cultural development, appreciating diversity, understanding the problem solving process. Problem solving, no, because even problem solving, we talked about other issues like what do you say, equal employment opportunities and other things. That is about problem solving, so no. Appreciating stages and cultural development, the author kind of gave us the list of cultural acceptance learning process, but it was not about appreciating them. Understanding the appreciative process, well, appreciative inquiry is proposed as a way of helping members of different cultures recognize and value their differences and create a new culture. So here, it is not about what is the process, it is about the outcome of the process, what is expected of the appreciative inquiry, right? So the expectation out of appreciative inquiry is more about accepting the diversity. Okay, in this particular question, 3 options got the word appreciation here. The difference needs to be observed here. Okay? One was about understanding the process, one was about understanding stages in the development, but the last paragraph is clearly about understand and accept the differences so that you have a better future, better scenario in future. So C is the thing. When you have options which are very close and which try to look at, they look at like traps for you, observe the nuances in the options, observe the differences in the options and attack those things. It becomes very clear. Always ask them, okay, is the focus on understanding the process of appreciation? Is the focus on understanding the stages of development, stages of cultural acceptance, or is it about appreciating diversity? So ultimately C becomes the answer here. Next one. Opening a bank account in a new culture is an example of which stage. So here you have an example and you need to map it with the stage. So when you open a bank account, like for instance, I do remember when I went abroad and for my master's, how many within few days, 2 or 3 days, I opened my bank account. So it was a small thing to be done, and it gives you a satisfaction. Okay, a task accomplished, right? It's like a small victory. And I cannot say it's a confusion part of it, because you opened a bank account and the achievement is there. You process the data and it's an achievement, so it can go with B. B is definitely one thing I can see. Now, honeymoon period was given more in terms of you are ignoring the negative piece. Opening a bank account, I don't think I can connect anything with, okay, the huge banking processes, or what are the concepts about overdrafts, what percentage of penalty is going to be charged, how much interest is going to be there, is it going to be high, is it going to be low? And that's too much of a thinking process. I don't think I'll go so far with that one line. So it is a period of triumphant. Okay, so I might go with happy victories. 121, the answer choice is B. Okay. Next one. According to the passage, it can be concluded that entering a culture that is very different from your own is overall. You clearly have the line that it is a learning process, active learning process. So let's go with it. Infatuation is a temporary, it's like not the real life, but the other thing. Exhausting, depressing, well, no, I think a learning process is what we'll go with. We have the line from the passage to go with that. Next one. Which of the following can be a valid inference based on the passage? What do you deduct from passage? 4 options are there, all the above, none of the above are not there, so I'll have to pick one answer. That's what I can say from that. Infatuation and heightened appreciation with a new culture can be maintained forever. Well, I don't think so, because there are some stages in terms of liking. Initially, you like it, you ignore the bad things. Later, you develop a lot of anger, so you're in that stage. Entry to a new culture evokes an extremely negative feeling. You go through multiple stages, so I'll have to pause this option and see, because confusion, then you have triumphant, then you have defeatedness, then you have wonder, exploratory behavior, then you have anger, then you have accepting reality. So let's see that. Affirmation of a new culture involves viewing it in its entirety with its strengths as well as weak points. That is what it is. When you embrace a culture, embrace it in full, positives and negatives, appreciate the differences. That's what the inference that we could deduct from the last paragraph. Next, organizational policies to deal with harassment can promote a change in culture. Well, that was more a problem-oriented thing, so I cannot connect it with culture-driven aspect. I would prefer C to be my better answer here. Okay, C seems to be a valid inference, because I would say A and B are not fully acceptable inferences, because they are process of a stage, process of cultural acceptance. D is a different direction. Okay. Okay. Assuming that's all clear, guys. Is the passage clear, guys? Third, fourth. Pretty much easy. How many questions did you get right? I forgot to ask that question earlier. Third and fourth, second, third, fourth. Yeah, let's discuss that aspect meanwhile. Second one is pretty much easy to medium passage. It's not at all difficult. Right? Second one is an easy to medium passage. I think you got a couple of strengthening, weakening kind of arguments. Maybe I can accept one mistake from your side. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions on the second passage. One mistake can be acceptable, but otherwise I think you should be doing it right. Third passage is pretty doable. All the options are pretty much direct, and you can connect with the passage. This one, each one of you is really targeting the top P, and you should get it right. And there's not much of confusion there. The third one should be almost right. And the passage difficulty level is also, it's not too difficult. They are easy to medium passages only. And question types are also easy to medium. The fourth passage you have cannot be inferred. You have a little trap word with the first sentence. And the second one is like a language play. Third, fourth, fifth looked okay. So yeah, 3 or 4 should be right here. Maybe 1 or 2 mistakes because of trap, or as it comes to the end and you're short of time, I might accept mistakes. But otherwise, I think 3 or 4 could be possible also. And yes, with practice, probably you can understand which sentence is turning out to be a trap also, right? By doing your mock analysis carefully and by eliminating options, you'll understand what kind of language is used to make you fall for it. Okay, so you'll get that. Let's get to the last paragraph, guys. Yeah, the last one. This paragraph, before I proceed to the paragraph, let me tell you something about passages, guys. Whenever you have a passage-based exam, always choosing the right passages are important. And there are some passages which might cause a lot of regression in terms of reading. So in terms of the first 1 to 4 passages that we have seen, very difficult areas to read. Yes, sometimes students say they have a feeling that I find it difficult to read an economics passage, or I find it to read a science passage, etc. But if you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, they are not difficult to read. The readability difficulty or regression aspects are low there, and it's pretty much doable. And the questions were also not complicated and not very difficult. They are pretty much straightforward. But coming to this paragraph, there is a possibility the students with average reading ability might find it difficult to interpret and might find it time consuming. And as it turns out to be the first passage, fifth passage, time is one thing that you might be thinking of how much time you allocate for this section. So one suggestion that I have is whenever you encounter this type of passage, come back later. Hold it and come back later. And one very important thing is if this turns out to be your first passage, don't be demoralized. Don't be demoralized also, especially to those who are average readers, who have chances of doing well, but who might get depressed by seeing the first question a little difficult one. Okay, so this is a passage that I would prefer to do later after completing the other areas. That's the first thing that I would say. Second one, how do I decide that is because the words, the way the language is there, as I read it, I feel that I am not able to find a footing into the passage and I might have to put a little extra effort to do that. That's why I've said I will do it later. Next one. When you have such scenarios of passages which appear to be daunting, what do we do? And I have time at the end. Okay, I have time at the end and I have a scenario where there is a daunting passage, but what do we do? Remember, this was an experience that I had even with the other competitive exams like CAT, and when we do reasoning questions there also. Uh, a passage might look difficult, guys, but look at the questions also. Sometimes passage looks difficult, but the questions and options are pretty much doable and easy. They are something which you can connect directly to the lines of the passage where you can pick factual pieces of data or lines, and it becomes easy. So if this is that kind of passage, totally leaving it is a disadvantage to you, right? Obviously, difficult passage, difficult questions, leaving it makes sense. But difficult looking passage, easy questions and easy options, well, no, I think we should try to make best use of that scenario and do the questions. Okay? That's the second thing that I want to talk about this passage. And the third thing is about how do we tackle passages where you find it difficult to connect with. This is a strategy that I want you to follow. Remember, guys, when assume you're climbing a mountain. Recently, I've seen this movie actually, Wonder Woman, where she tries to climb a wall or something like that, and she wants a grip, and she tries to make a hit the wall and try to get hold of some kind of grip. Well, that is what we are supposed to do with passages where you're not able to understand. Find a footing in the passage, find a hold on the passage, find a grip on the passage. Try to understand something from the passage. When you have data or when you have information that you're not able to process, try to interpret those lines which look simple. Try to decipher those words which look simple, because that might help you to connect with the passage. Also, look at data which has nouns and facts, which might also help you in terms of some grounding into the passage. So the ultimate goal is get your connect with the passage. It could be in a normal procedure, it's like understanding the entire passage and going with the data, but this one is more to do with that. Okay, so get hold of that piece of information which you can understand and try to interpret the passage. Another thing is such passages might also need you a 3M kind of approach. That means you might not be able to do a little skim scan. A quick reading or a skim scan might not be sufficient. You probably have to understand the content carefully understand each paragraph carefully, understand the message given in the paragraph, understand the way the content is developed, right? And understand what the author is trying to say, right? 3M method, I hope you know that. We talk about it usually in classes, right? Message, method, and mood. That might be helpful with passages of this kind in order to do them. Again, as I said, this will be the last one to do in the exams so that your time is effectively used. Ultimately, the total score is important, guys, right? Ultimately, the total score is important, and I don't want you to be disappointed unnecessarily. Now, let's look at the passage now. In case of experience, the connection with a particular point of view seems much closer. When you have some experience, you try to connect with a point of view. It is difficult to understand what could be meant by objective character of an experience apart from the particular point of view from which its subject apprehends. So basically what happens, experience is like my experience, right? And objectivity is basically a neutral kind of opinion. It's not your opinion. So how can you take away the subjectivity part, and how can you make an objective output of an experience? That's what this thing is all about. Remember, we talk about tone of passages, and in that scenario we say objective, subjective, etc. Objective paper, subjective paper. I'm sure this example was also given in classes for you. When you have an objective paper, it's like an MCQs. Any answer, you get the same answer. ABCD, right, wrong. That's it. But when it's a descriptive paper, which happens mostly with board exams, we always say that your answer paper should look good, you should have proper side headings, you should have good handwriting, etc. Because there might be a little bit of subjectivity parameter. I might give 4 marks, somebody might give 3 marks, somebody might give 5 marks. There is a possibility of a minimum difference there. Okay, so that is what is called subjectivity aspect. So the author's question is, when experience is basically from one person's point of view, how do you make it objective? That is what this discussion is on. After all, what would be left of what it was like to be a bat if one removed the viewpoint of the bat? If the viewpoint of the bat is considered to be bat's experience, and if we treat it, it's like it's not objective, then how can we actually interpret it properly? How can we know to be like a bat without considering the bat's opinion? So that's what the statement is all about. But if experience doesn't have, in addition to its subjective character, an objective nature that can be apprehended from many different points of view, then how it can be supposed that a Martian investigating my brain might be observing physical processes which were my mental process only from a different point of view? How, for that matter, could a human physiologist observe them from another point of view? So you are considering the experience of considering an experience, connecting it with objective character, and then you're questioning here how investigation when it comes to a mental processes, or how psychologists consider data, because they are all points of view. That is what the question is all about. So you have an open-ended question. Question leads to the next paragraph. So let's see what we have in the second paragraph. So first paragraph was more about experience and objectivity aspects. We appear to be faced with a general difficulty about psychophysical reduction, psychological things, connecting it with the physical aspects. In other areas, the process of reduction is moved in the direction of greater objectivity, toward a more accurate view of the real nature of things. So, okay, so basically in other areas, they try to get greater objectivity. That's what we can say here. This is achieved by reducing our dependence on individuals or species-specific points of view towards the object of investigation. So I'm looking at particular investigation. What I try to do is I reduce my dependence on a particular individual or a particular species. So basically, if I have to interpret it, I would say like I'm looking at multiple samples. So if your sample size is huge, then the dependence on one individual comes down. There is going to be a normalization, or you have better interpretation, better output. And then we describe it not in terms that the impressionist makes on our senses, but in terms of more general effects and of properties detectable by means other than human senses, dislike or opinions. But if you say how white it is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each one has some parameter. You're measuring it like that, then it turns out to be more a objective parameter. So it's not more about your opinions or likeness or your senses recognizing something, but the way it is measured is different. That's what they're trying to say. The less it depends on specific human point, the more objective is the description, more sample sizes, more interpretations. It is possible to follow this path because allow the concepts and ideas we employ in thinking about external world are initially applied from a point of view that involves our perceptual apparatus. They are used by us to refer things beyond themselves toward which we have a phenomenal point of view. So basically we use our eyes to see something and we try to talk about it, but the kind of interpretations or final deductions that we are trying to do, we are not trying to connect it with how we sense it or our subjective opinion. That's what this process is. So we might use our senses, but we might not using how the senses feel. Okay. Next one, experience itself, however, doesn't seem to fit the pattern. So it might happen with other physical things and all the areas, but in case of experience, how do we do it? It doesn't fit into the pattern. The idea of moving from appearance to reality seems to make no sense here. What is the analog in this case to pursuing a more objective understanding of the same phenomena by abandoning the initial subjective viewpoint toward them in favor of another that is more objective but concerns the same thing? So here the simple question is, how do we work it when it comes to experience? Because experience is about viewpoint itself, and how do you remove that viewpoint aspect? Okay, so let's look at the questions here. First one, barring conscious experience, which process of reduction among the following has the greatest objectivity? Barring, except, conscious experience, what you feel. Which process of reduction among the following has greatest objectivity? Now, objectivity, you know that it is more to do with not a specific opinion. It's more like a neutral opinion type of. Let's look at it. A physicist describing a nuclear reactor to a layman, a highly distinguished philosopher elaborating Freudian psychology to psychology students, a layman describing the process of lightning to other schooler, a mother who is a chef at a restaurant making her daughter note down the specific recipe. Now in this question, guys, honestly, there's one trick that I want you to look at it. This is a question where you might see going from options benefit here. If you look at it, option A, B, and option D, all these things talk about some specialist here, whether it's a chef or a philosopher or a physicist. I'm trying to tell someone who doesn't know about it. A specialist will have definite piece of an opinion and he will talk in a specific way. But look at it, layman. A layman's opinion might not be in a specific aspect, right? So it might be in a different way. It's more about not a subjective kind of thing. So this is what we are trying to say. And if you look at option, this is one thing which is going from layman to someone else, right? So layman is basically someone who doesn't have specific knowledge on that area. Option C is actually a different option compared to the other thing. So even if you did not understand the question and the passage, this one could be a calculated risk. I'm sure Narisa connected in one of his sessions also about elimination technique, a dump process and all the other things. This is one thing that I could approach, going from options, trying to connect with the passage. Again, as I said earlier, also connect with the passage. And I'm trying to connect with the passage and connecting with the question by looking at the options. Again, this strategy, guys, this strategy is a strategy that you would use when nothing else works. Okay, this is not a strategy that I want you to use for every other option or every other question type. No, this is the last tool or last tactic that you need to apply. Okay, because there's a risk of going wrong and right here. It's a calculated risk that you might have to make. Okay. Next one. Make the correct inference here. So you have 4 options, all the above, none of the above not given. I have to read each and every option carefully, try to connect it with the passage. And when you have such questions, sometimes you are lucky to have simple sentences. Sometimes you will have complicated sentences. All you need is take the data, connect it with the passage, see if it's right or wrong, validate it or prove it wrong. An objective point of view of an experience completely depends on the observer. Objectivity itself should not depend on the observer. Objectivity depends on subjectivity of the observer. Subjectivity of experience depends on the objective of the observer. This is like two X tends to Y tends to X kind of statements. Objectivity of an experience depends on the point of view of the subject that perceives it. So this is a line that we also have from the passage also. Objectivity and how the subject apprehends it, which is in the first 3 lines of the passage. So D becomes an answer here. Okay? Careful reading helps you to go to that answer. First 3 lines of the passage. Next one. Which of the following information would strengthen the author's contention? Okay, we need to understand which part of the argument that the author is trying to connect with whenever you have such questions. So let's see the options too. There is nothing left in our experience, understanding of what it is like to be a tiger with viewpoint of tiger is not considered. This is analogous to the example of a bat that we have in the passage. So let's park it there. Let's see other option. No understanding of a physical phenomena can be complete without understanding the viewpoint of the phenomena. A phenomena doesn't have a viewpoint. It is more like the people or the subjects involved in it. So this is wrong. To understand the subjectivity of an experience, physicality of it should be understood. It is objectivity of an experience that we are talking about. Or subjectivity of an experience. We need to really look into this line carefully. Next one, to understand the objective generalization of a concept, we must understand the physical and chemical processes involved in a greater detail. So 126 here, you have the understand the subjectivity of an experience. Yeah, our question was more in terms of the objectivity. How do we understand the objective character of an experience? Again, we have that from the second line. Okay. As I said, we need to be cautious. We might get confused with such language plays. Now, in all these things, A looks like a better answer choice for us, right? Because that is one thing which is in agreement with the passage where he's questioning that how do we make an experience and make it objective, and how we can consider that experience when we are not looking at the viewpoint of the actual person involved. So that's like a confusing statements that we had in the first passage. But elimination technique and reiterating or ratifying with the passage can help us find the answers. Okay, B is gone because of the viewpoint from whose viewpoint. C is gone because of the subjectivity and the objectivity aspect. Third, D is gone because of that physical and chemical process that he is trying to connect there. A is the best possible answer. Next one. If the following statement is taken to be true, if an experience has, in addition to its subjective character, an objective nature that can be apprehended from many different point of views, then which of the following must be true? So this is a question where we need to understand the question carefully. Which of the following statement is taken to be true? So you treat the options to be true. Don't worry if it is exactly there in the passage or not, but treat it. Okay. If an experience has, in addition to its subjective nature, experience itself is subjective nature, in addition to its subjective nature, an objective nature that can be taken from different points of view, then which of the following must be true? So basically we had a situation where we discussed in the passage that multiple samples or individuals' dependence on an opinion should be taken out, etc. Let's see the options. No two humans working in field of physics would have similar understanding or experience of a concept. The understanding of the basic experience of gravity on Earth would differ greatly from scientist to scientist. If you see, first option, no two people will have similar understanding. So opinion, it differs is what it's trying to say. Second one, also people would differ in inputs is what it is trying to say. A and B are both like that. Let's see C. If a group of scientists would be asked to define their experience in a gravity-free zone, their experience would be more or less understood by each other. So there is not a difference. There's going to be a similarity of output we are seeing there. A and B are talking about difference in opinions or difference in outputs. C is trying to say a similarity kind of thing. I'm giving a broader explanation, guys, so that you'll understand better. And D is all the above. So definitely A, B, and C are differing with each other. So all the above is ruled out. Now we are talking about objective nature, which itself is that individual's perspective or individual's influence should come out of it. In C, that is what we are trying to say, that all the scientists might come across with a common kind of a version which is understood by all. That means individual's effect is taken out there. So definitely this becomes the objective kind of statement here. 127, it's C. ठीक है. Last one. Which of the following is in keeping with the author's thought regarding psychophysical reduction? Okay, again, we have to see the options, verify it, eliminate it. In order to understand the exam experience, we should leave the subjective viewpoint to get objectivity, but then the essence of experience would be lost. That is what we had the bad example with. You have to understand the experience, leave the subjectivity. But the problem is that is the viewpoint is getting lost. Next one. Psychophysical reduction of our external world is possible because of a perceptual apparatus. Second paragraph talks about it. Psychophysical reduction in other areas is possible. We can explain the phenomena of external world through our senses or through immediate experience. We are not directly, but through perceptual apparatus, we are trying to look at it. How we see and feel is measured in those areas which are not about feelings, but something which everybody can look at or consider in a similar ways. So 128, considering the second and third paragraph, you can go. Second paragraph, you can go for B, all the above as an answer. As I said, this turns out to be a little difficult paragraph, and the difficulty level is definitely high. A number of people, actually 50 to 60% of the people have attempted it. And interestingly, some of the questions have highest accuracy percentages when compared to the other areas also. So that kind of says to me that you always are more alert when it seems to be difficult. But get it, guys, as the exams approach, the easy ones should be done right too. And obviously, increase your attempts in reasoning, guys. Many of the question types are easy, they're not difficult, and you could do it better. Any questions from your side? I'm done with the passage that we need to discuss and the mocks part of it. Any question type or anything in specific, if you have any questions, shoot it, or we'll call it for today. Any questions, guys? You might be able to do all questions. You might not be able to do all questions in the given timeline in an exam during those 2 hours. But what I recommend you to do is take a little extra time and solve it after the exam, so that you will know whether your accuracy is right or wrong. Understand it. Try to look at the solutions. Connect with it. If there's any difference, work on it. Try to remember the patterns of questions. Try to remember your approach in terms of tackling the question types. So try to remember the way the language is portrayed. I'm not asking you to remember the passages, but how you evaluated it, how you targeted a particular question type. Your approach part of it, get command on your approach, then automatically it becomes easy. Because ultimately we need some strategies to tackle something. So hopefully we had around 5 passages and 116, 106 to 128, right? So around 22 to 28 plus questions are there. So hopefully I would say at least in the questions, 1 or 2 questions, minimum 3 questions per passage are pretty doable, guys. And it's good to do good to target at least 4, and some of the passages can be done 5 if you're aiming an NLU. So work on it, understand why you have missed something, and then we could look into it. Okay? Okay, guys, then have a good day. We end it for now.